everyone, welcome back to another episode of Super Prime UK. Welcome back, James.
Hey Rob, how you doing?
All good, thanks, all good. More uncertainty, more volatility. Every time we meet to talk about what's going on, there's another curveball this week. It's the elections.
Yeah, local elections this week for a lot of London boroughs and boroughs across the UK. Not elections for everyone as they stagger them, but feels like a bit of a landslide for the reform. I think it was widely reported prior to the local elections that that's what they were anticipating. I think the biggest sort of net loser of seats seems to be Labour, sort of relatively closely followed by the Conservative Party. Lib Dems holding fairly steady, slight increase for the Green Party as well. I think we're going to see a couple more councils, by the look of things, being reform run and operated. So we'll see how that changes the landscape of things. It's such a diverse political landscape at the moment. With anyone that's in power at the moment, it seems to be such a high level of scrutiny they're receiving from the public. It's hard to, when you get into power, remain popular, it feels like.
Yeah, I'm fascinating, James. I mean, where is that going to lead us? We're still 3 years away from an election. Will the current government survive that long? What does that mean for industry, property, wealth, super prime, real estate? What's the outlook?
Well, I think if we focus on the property sector, we've got the hangover of some of the Conservative policies of the Renters Reform Act and things which were initially tabled by the previous party, which has been enacted by the current government with a couple of tweaks here and there, but that's now in force. And what we're seeing is a number of evictions the last month prior to the Act coming in, and some of those have been evictions with a new tenancy which has been granted to on slightly different terms, whereas a lot of those evictions are actually landlords, small-scale landlords exiting that market, as they maybe haven't got the appetite to continue being a landlord, with maybe some of the more enhanced red tape and additional sort of works that are required, and maybe in terms of their planning, slightly less flexibility as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I suppose, the perception and sentiment which drives this industry is critical. And yes, you've got historical policies coming through, and the main question is, well, what happens next? Where is the country heading? Where are we going? Yeah,
I do think at certain price points you might get a little bit of an influx of properties coming to the market in the next quarter, just from those which are exiting that sector, and whether those are properties sold with vacant possession or whether they're with the tenant in situ, we'll see. I don't think the volume is going to be enough for it to cause any oversupply issues. Certainly not in London. It'll just be a little bit of a boost to the available housing stock from a sales perspective.
Yeah, talking about housing stock, a lot of information out there and articles and coverage on the lack of new development opportunities and the lack of new build under the first 2 years of this government, and the sentiment with the major house builders in the UK is currently pretty flat.
Yeah, a lot of the the top 5 UK developers in terms of volume are all mothballing a lot of their sites. They're sort of land banking, and unless there is a more favourable consent that's granted by a certain planning authority, local authority, then they're not building out a lot of their schemes. And it's due to a number of factors. One, we've lost the Help to Buy for the first time buyers. A huge amount of units. Those 1s, 2s and 3 bed units in London were specifically designed and priced for that market. And without that, the affordability has dropped off a cliff. So a lot of the developers are no longer have got that sort of tranche of sales which they can rely on being acquired by the entry level buyers. From there, we've had some material costs, going up. We've had, which has been actually, slightly heightened by the Middle Eastern war. But I think we're yet to see the full scale of that, and whether that will cause any delays to those existing developments as we move through the summer months.
Yeah, we're still, again, like I said previously, at an uncertain point with what direction the situation in the Middle East will go. If we're looking for some positivity, we would hope that concludes very soon and markets can settle and return to where they were previously, and maybe the impact on the materials and inflation and fuel and the impact on interest rates maybe won't be as severe as some of the predictions that have been made. If, on the other hand, that doesn't happen and this continues, then clearly many areas will be impacted.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully with the low volume of housing we've had, some of the builders merchants might have some stockpiled somewhere. But no, in terms of the residential market, I think build to rent still remains one of the most sort of lucrative and popular schemes for developers, or maybe RPs that are moving into that space, or maybe some investment funds to invest in. Why is that? I think the site has to be right. Everything has to fit in if it's going to be a viable build-to-rent scheme. But I think as we are currently with the Renters Reform Act, we could have a bit of an uplift in terms of general rental prices. And I think the added red tape, it's going to be maybe flatter rental prices in the long term, but now I feel like we're going to have a bit of an uplift in the general rental prices. So again, that would be a positive to the build to rent market. Just everything seems to be very yield driven. I don't feel like there's going to be that same capital appreciation in property which we've seen in the past. So I think investors, individuals, landlords have more shifted to a very much a yield-based analysis when they're looking at opportunities in the housing stock.
And back to our day-to-day super prime, how do we feel things have traded so far this year, and what are you seeing happening on the streets?
Yeah, so I think it's depends which metric you're looking at this market at. I'd say in terms of sentiment, and a lot of the press you get, it's quite negative at the moment. But if we look at more of our live data we've got, if we look back at last month, April, there was 10 million plus sales for that month, which is above average for what we saw in 2025, averaging about 8 sales of 10 million plus per month for that year. It's the second highest of the year, albeit we're only early into 2026. But in terms of the data there at the very top of the market, that hasn't indicated any sort of lack of transactions or people exiting that market necessarily. So I think it's very much, if you look at the data, you wouldn't see a particular downward trend if we analyse it to 2024, 2025, Rob.
Yeah, I think what you see the big focus on is on price reductions and how across the board everything is selling for less money, whereas in what we're seeing and what's trading, that isn't entirely the case. So yes, there are some profile of properties that may be run down, in need of modernisation, or where there's a certain oversupply in certain blocks, which are clearly seeing a significant reduction, and broadly double digits plus. At the same time, there's some really good prime, super prime, high specification turnkey transactions that are taking place that are getting premiums. And I think the nuanced nature of such a specialist expert market isn't as reported and understood by maybe the mass market.
Yeah, I think the critical thing there, Robert, you're saying is the turnkey properties, those trophy assets or something which is completely turnkey, ready to move into. A lot of ultra high net worths in that space are completely unwilling to take on a 1, 2, 3 year project whereby they might excavate a basement, back to brick, renovation, extension. There's just no real appetite for that from what we're seeing, unless the price point is at a really incentivized point. And it's some of those sales which have become the real focus of the media, and it's those sales which maybe kind of the spotlight more of maybe a real sort of below market value sale as people are reporting. But actually I think it's a stance of the buyers whereby it's just that they're not willing to undertake those massive projects, for a number of factors in terms of time being one of them, but also some of the uncertainty with costs, and just having the right team in place to achieve the level of finish, level of specification which they're looking for. A couple of real big transactions the last month or so, Rob. I think a lot of people reported about Nick Candy's house. Is it 200 million or 250 million there? So spectacular property, one of the largest sales we've seen here in London ever. There's one other on the market which I can think of, so we could get another £200 million transaction this year. So 2 in a year. It doesn't feel like that's a really sort of downward declining market. Just in the last week, we've had another £50 million sale in a South Kensington Garden Square. So there's definitely activity from buyers in the market.
Yep, I think that will continue. London will always remain London. Yes, the attractiveness from a wealth perspective has reduced over the last period of time, and that's clear to be seen. At the same time, there are inflows, and there is still a want to be here in the super prime space, and let's see how that plays out for the rest of the year. A show wouldn't be a show without discussing football, James. Coming to the real nitty-gritty now of the Premier League.
Yeah.
Title, relegation.
I've watched a lot of football the last 2 weeks.
Where's it all going to end up? Next time we speak, it will all be over. So where's it all going to end up?
Yeah, I feel like Arsenal are going to win the Premier League, and I think it's great for the Premier League that we're going to get, in recent history, a new winner. And if we look back the last 2 or 3 seasons, they think they've led for like the most amount of days, but they're not quite managed to get the title. They've sort of fallen away late. But I think slightly bigger squad this year, better squad, has maybe enabled you to come through some of those periods where you had like the injury crises.
Relegation, West Ham or Spurs?
I think West Ham have just. I feel West Ham will be the third team that goes down. So it'd be a real shame to lose them from the league, and I think it's going to be that they're going to lose some of the top players as well. I can't see Jared Bowen and Thomas Souček. I can't see some of those players necessarily playing a full season in the Championship to restore them to the Premier League.
And soon we'll have a World Cup to talk about. Look forward to hearing your predictions. I know you're a big fan of the World Cup, so hopefully we'll have that to discuss in our next show.
And also 3 teams in the 3 European trophies: the Champions League final, the Europa League final, the Europa Conference League final. So fantastic.
I think that's never happened for an English teams to be in all the finals. So for Aston Villa, Crystal Palace and Arsenal to all be there, I think it's great for the Premier League.
If everything aligns, we could have 6 teams in the Champions League next season. That's never happened before, so that would be phenomenal. Arsenal, I don't know if they've got enough to overcome PSG. I know their defence is going to be better, but the way PSG play, Arsenal are going to have to maybe ride their luck once more if they're going to win their first ever Champions League.
Possibly. Time will tell. Next time we meet James on this show, we will have all the answers. Brilliant. Great to catch up again, James, and great to see you all, and we'll see you all again soon.
Yeah, thanks very much, Rob. Thanks, everyone.